Hey, welcome to Authentic Influence Live. This is Anthony Chansamove from Simple Creative Marketing. This is the first episode for 2022, and we've been on a bit of a hiatus. Well, I've been on a hiatus. I've been on a break and really getting my head into what's the plan for 2022. I'm on a mission to get a book out, and I've publicly declared that before, so I feel nervousness as I even share this now, but I'm going to bring on a guest who's going to keep me accountable. And we're going to talk about cold email outreach, and specifically, how do you use cold email outreach to engage with partners and potential collaborators? And really, a lot of B2B effort and time is spent on, building relationships with different organizations or potential clients or partners. But how do you actually do that? And how do you do it when you don't know the partner or they don't know who you are? So I'm going to introduce you to Laura Lopich. Laura is a cold email and pitch expert who helps freelancers, consultants, and entrepreneurs make more sales naturally with emails. So 4 months after launching her business, she grew it by 1,400%. That's a real number, using only cold emails. Laura's success continued when one of her cold emails brought in a $20,000 client. And want to know how she did that, and she has since helped her students get their next big 10K or 25K client with cold pitch emails using her powerful Relevancy Method. Now, Laura wrote a viral article on cold emails for copy hackers, and that's actually how I discovered her, and has been featured on highly ranked industry blogs and podcasts. Her words have appeared on Crazy Egg, Kissmetrics, Predictable Revenue, and Unbounce. I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you would know most of those companies, and she's also spoken at conferences like MicroConf and Shine Bootcamp. All right, so let's bring in Laura. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, it's going to be a fun, engaging dialogue here around going cold in a good way. And just why don't we start off with just a bit of background? I shared sort of the intro story of how you had some great success early on with the business, which is not common. Like, a lot of businesses struggle at the beginning. It's kind of like, I've gone from corporate, I've left my job, or I've done something, and and it's rare to hear these type of stories where you do something and it gives you that quick boost and you have that confidence and you're like, I can totally do this. So can you take us through that experience, and how did you even get into like launching your own business? What were you doing before?
Yeah, great question. So before, I was actually working as a trial paralegal at a law firm, and I had been there for basically 8 years. And a lot of my job was confirming stuff in emails. Basically, nothing was set in stone or actually happened unless it was written down, because lawyers, as you know, like to argue everything. So I had to document everything. So I got to be really good at emails. And then I realized basically the next step up the ladder was to go to law school. And that was something that I had decided I didn't want to do. I didn't want to have like homework for a client for the rest of my life. So of course, the natural next step is to quit in a flurry of rage and start my own business, which literally meant I actually did have, quote, homework for the rest of my life every night. But the difference was it was for me versus my boss, right? So that was like a big shift in deciding like, oh, well, now I'm the boss. First of all, there was a huge mind shift in that, going from employee to my own boss. But the funny thing is about like my story is, it sounds like so glitzy and glamorous, but what gets left out of that flashy media bio is the like 3 months of hell and self-doubt where I was sending cold emails like 25 a week. So usually it was like 5 a day, every week, every day for 3 months. And for the first like 3 months, it took 3 full months to like get like any kind of response, to know that like something was working. So that part gets left out of that, like, right, flashy media bio, but that's the reality of it. And so I started sending cold emails basically because, one, I didn't have a referral network to start off with. 2, I had no budget for ads. 3, I didn't really want to learn ads because, again, no budget. I was in this to make money, not spend money. And I just needed a client now. So I relied on my email skills that I had learned working at the law firm, those persuasion tactics. And how could I start persuading strangers to work with me? So at the end of those 3 months, that's when the traction finally came in. That's when things started lining up, mainly because I discovered the relevancy method and what that meant to cold emails and how that translated into getting someone to actually reply to me.
I'm really glad that you sort of touched on. Where's me? Okay, there you go. Just touching upon that 3-month period where it was, oh my gosh, I'm sending 25 emails a day. I don't know if anyone's ever going to say yes. Can I get this business off the ground? It's you're putting yourself out there, and it's already like I'm feeling the nerves of that experience because I've had a similar experience where the people in my network when I started my business were not going to be clients. They were not ideally the people I was trying to serve because I come from a corporate career and you were in legal. For me, I was in customer service IT, so I wasn't trying to reach IT people. Like that wasn't where I was going. But for me, just like I have this gut feeling like, oh my gosh, even the thought of sending a cold email to someone, I'd rather go and eat like mud. Like for me, I don't know if you've had that kind of emotion going on for you, but maybe you have a tougher skin because you come from a legal background. But let's talk about, I'm sure you learned a ton of mistakes along the way and what didn't work, right? So in order to get to what worked, okay, what are some of the common mistakes, you made, but also you're seeing other people make now? Because I'm sure you're getting pictures in your inbox every day like I do. So what are some common or, 2 or 3 issues with cold email as you see them currently?
Yeah. The main one that I made and that I see a lot of people making right now is focusing on yourself as the sender of the email. Basically, nobody cares about you. It's like a hard truth to swallow, but it's true. Everybody cares about themselves. So you really have to answer that question for your reader of what's in it for me. And that's what the relevancy method boils down to is how do you figure out what's relevant? What does your reader care about? How can you answer that question for them? And then how can you take all that information, that data that you've researched and uncovered and put it in your email? And that's truly why my emails like just dive bombed in the first 3 months and why it took a while to get replies and then clients. As soon as I figured that out, things changed. Things changed quickly. And that's the biggest way that you can see an immediate result in your cold email is if you approach it from your reader's mindset and answer that question for them. Like, why should they care about you? What's in it for them? Like they're not going to do anything unless you help them see the benefit. And so when you help them see the benefit of like how you can help their business, maybe you're in marketing, like how can you help them grow their business? How can you help them get more customers? For me, it's a pretty like linear path. Like if you're a service provider, you usually need more customers. If you send a cold email, you get a new customer, right? So that's how I could help. But think about it for your own business. How can you help the person that you're cold emailing? And then how can you phrase it in a way that they're like, of course, you're the person I've been looking for.
That's really, really powerful. And just switching, I guess it's really having empathy for the other person. We don't like it when people send us emails saying, hey, do you want to buy my SEO service? Or do you want to, share this blog post that we've done on your, link to it on your website? And, I get these, at least 5 a day. And I don't even respond to them anymore. I used to have a canned email response where I'm just saying like, what's in it for me? Like that's really, to be frank, like that's what I'm asking. And, so what would you say then? I think you might have already covered it, but I'd like to sort of wrap up that question there with what's the number one question your cold email must answer for your reader to reply yes?
And that number one question is what's in it for me? It's a universal human question. It's actually probably the question that I answered for you kind of in my pitch to help us lead to this conversation today. Like, and so that's, if you're wanting to sell anything, if you're wanting to get anyone to do anything, be it your spouse, be it your cold email reader, be it your kid, you've got to look at it from that point of view and answer their question, what's in it for me?
That's so simple and yet so complicated. So
it's hard.
It's not easy, because if it was, we'd all be doing it, right? So,
right.
Or doing it well. So let me correct that. So let's talk about, for those who are kind of new to the topic and maybe they haven't even considered cold email as an option. Maybe they, like me, they cast it aside early on in the piece and went, I'm going to go and do the Facebook ads. I'm going to do the Facebook groups and the Twitters and all these other things. So how would you define cold email in comparison to other types of emails? And what are the different types of cold emails that you can use to grow your business?
Yeah, I love that you asked this question, because so often people kind of automatically go to like one type of cold email, the cold sales email, which is kind of infamous across the internet. But that is not the only type of cold email. So let me like back up a little bit. The definition of a cold email is an email that's sent to a stranger. So basically, you can think of like people as like cold, warm, or hot. So hot would be like a good friend. They know what you're up to. They know what you're doing. They're super interested in your work. Someone who's warm probably has heard your name in passing, right? Someone who's cold has no idea who you are. You could pass them on the street. They would have no clue who you are. So really, a cold email is you're emailing a stranger to get them to take the action that you want them to take. And that doesn't mean like hitting delete, right? That means taking, like, in a lot of cases, the cold email, you're asking them to reply to you, right? Or like let you know if they're interested, if you're pitching like a partnership. So there are a handful of types of cold emails. One is that like internet infamous one, the cold sales email, where you're pitching a stranger to get them to become your client. So to like work with you, right? That's the one that everybody thinks of. But you can also use a cold email. A second one is to cold email an expert to get their opinion on a blog post that you're writing. So you need kind of some extra expert juice, right? for your blog post. Another type of cold email, the third one, is where you've maybe written a blog post or talked about an expert in a podcast interview, and you reach out to that expert or that company to let them know that, hey, I like showcased your work here. Just thought you'd be interested. This one works really well. It's kind of like one of those stealthy ones, but it's connected me with lots of really cool people like Noah Kagan of AppSumo and Rob Walling when he was at Drip. Like it's a really effective but stealthy maneuver. And it's really cool because you're basically just highlighting their cool work. The fourth type of cold email that you can use is to pitch a podcast. Pretty straightforward. The fifth is to pitch a webinar or maybe a Facebook Live. So where you're getting on in front of the other person's audience. So more of in line of a partnership, right? Or a collaboration perhaps. And then the sixth one is where you can pitch an affiliate partnership. Yeah, where, you work out some details on, hey, I'll sell your product in exchange for this, or maybe, whatever the details might be. But you can also do that one too.
Yeah, I really like all the different types that you've highlighted there. So just to recap, we've got sort of cold sales email, which most of us know about, the expert opinion email, where you're asking for an opinion from someone you see is an expert in your industry. There's the third, which is expert outreach, right? So, and I use that one quite often, where you're mentioning an expert that you've featured in some kind of content, and you're saying, hey, I mentioned you in this way. We'll come back to that because I've got a question around that one.
Sure.
And then we've got pitch a podcast, pitch to get on a podcast, pitch to get on a webinar or a Facebook Live, and then pitch to get an affiliate partnership and discuss how that might work. So let's circle back to the expert outreach, because I get this a lot too. So I get a lot of the cold sales email, then I get a lot of the expert outreach, and a lot of the time it's like I'm as the expert or the person who's being pitched. I'm always looking at, well, how did you feature me? right?
Mm.
And does it, like, is it just because you linked to my blog? Did you share a tweet that I put out there and you've embedded that in your content? So are there any and I imagine someone like a Noah Kagan would get a ton of those. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, are there any tips or insights you have around like standing out? If you're going to do that, if you're going to do the expert outreach method, like, is there something that you can do to really stand out from all the other expert outreach emails they're getting in their inbox?
Yeah, I would say the best option is to make sure that how you're featuring them is juicy. So it's not just like embedding a tweet, like how you said, like, oh, hey, I mentioned you. And you're like, really? That that was the mention? And a lot of times when I've done this tactic in the past, I've dissected like a company's email. So I've like substantially highlighted them in a pretty hefty blog post, right? That's been the main way that I've used this tactic. So it's not just like a quick, like, hey, I linked to you. It's like you were like a fourth or a fifth of my blog posts and how I talked about your company and what you were doing and kind of gave you like a mini write-up. And then I dissected, I think in the example I gave for Drip, I dissected like one of their onboarding emails for like Noah Kagan. I dissected and used one of the cold emails that he had actually gotten. He had previously analyzed it, and then I used his analysis to back up one of my substantial points. And so this particular email is in that Viral Copy Hackers blog post. So if you want to see it, head over to them and you can see what I mean. Like I didn't just like one-off reference it. It was pretty substantial in helping me back up a point, really. Yeah. Awesome. So I think it's like,
is this the one?
Yeah, this is the one. You're awesome. Pulling it up right here on the game, man.
Yeah. Well, I like to, because people would like to watch these replays on video, so as well as the audio.
Cool.
But this is so they can actually see. Like me, I'm a visual learner, so I need to show people this is what's going on. So what really? I mean, yep.
Let's see.
Maybe if I go to table of contents, it's easier. So which section are we going to?
Oh my. It could be. I wrote this one a long time ago. It could be. I think if you just keep scrolling, it'll pop out. It's one of the screenshots that has lots of red lighting. Oh, here we go. Wait, go back up just a little bit. This one. This is the one. So I use this cold email. It's one that Noah got from someone, right? And he has like his analysis underneath the bold. So his analysis is in the italics. But I used it to back up my point of doing research and being relevant to your cold email reader. Because Noah was so generous and gave me his point of view. It's like he like teed me up for this amazing blog post. So Noah, if you're listening, I owe you one.
So good, and it's very clever, and it shows you've done your homework. So I'm curious. I mean, this is an epic post. Like, this literally is, I don't know how many thousands of words here, but and also it embeds a lot of screen captures. There's a lot of it shows like just the thought process. Can you take us through, because our audience geek out about all of this stuff? So how do you just the thought process when you were designing this article, like before you even went to, I'm going to pitch it to copy, or did you start with, I'm going to pitch it to copy hackers? What was the actual, how did you plan this out? And then how did you go from idea to let's get it to copy hackers and then them approving it and getting it onto the site?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, so the whole thought process was I had met Joanna, the founder of Copy Hackers, through a mastermind I did. So if you're hoping to do like a partnership or a collaboration with someone who's kind of a bigger name, definitely join one of their like masterminds where you can get like face-to-face time. And so really, I didn't realize how cool my story was in that I used cold emails to launch my business and grew it so much until someone made a mention of that. And then I was like, oh, this is a unique point. And so in that mastermind that Joanna hosted and put on, she was stressing the importance of being visible and getting publicity and getting guest posts. So I was like, of course, I'm going to pitch her. So I used that starting off point, right? Hey, I was in your mastermind. You said to do this, so I'm doing this. I'm pitching you.
Love
So
it.
here's my idea, right? And then from there, I followed Copy Hacker's very well thought out process on what to include in the pitch, what to do with the outline. So I would say my main tip is to read their instructions, because chances are, if you want to do like a guest post or partnership of that kind, they likely have some sort of framework for you to follow. And chances are they've thought through that process for you already. So you don't have to guess. You just have to be like, hey, I'd like to do this. What's the next step?
And that's such a good point you've made around just understanding their frameworks, what they expect from a piece of content if they're going to publish it. A lot of blogs, if you go out there and just go look at, they might have a guest contributor section or some kind of link or editorial guidelines, and you basically they lay it out for you. Here's the checklist. Follow the checklist before you pitch it to us, right?
Yep.
And then the other really cool thing you said there was joining a mastermind, finding, connecting with the editor, the influencer, whoever it may be, building some kind of relationship before you go cold pitching them. Because I think, based on the quality of content, I think you would have gone through anyway with this, but it helps that Joanna kind of already knew, oh, this is Laura, we've met before. And I think that just closes the gap between cold and, hot or warm. Like they know, this is not a total stranger. Because the common sort of tip I hear is, go join their email list and follow them for some time and then reply to them in that way. But if you don't actually read the newsletters, if you don't actually pay attention, I'm on your newsletter, Noah, but I'm going to pitch you, and then he's literally pointing to you, he'll point you to his site and go, that's the link, where you have to follow these guidelines. And just it's to me, it sounds like just doing that little bit more than most people would, and it really doesn't take that much more time. Like I think it's
No.
yeah.
It really doesn't. And I'm glad you brought up that point. It's actually, like, if you think about it, it's not really about the time. If you think about it in terms of like, this person is maybe that high school crush that you had, right? And you're like 20 years, 30 years post high school graduation. And you're like, I wonder what that person's up to. I wonder what they're doing. I wonder if they're on Facebook. Oh, let me look. I wonder if they're on Twitter. If you approach it from that viewpoint, it's like way more fun, first of all, to do like research on someone. And it also helps you see them as a human, which is a huge part in overcoming the nerves that you can always get when you cold email someone. There's always going to be nerves. It's just part of the process. But if you can see them as a person, as a human, versus like this, like, oh, this amazing person who's done all this stuff that you would love to do, it's going to change the way you approach them. And it's going to make your email like way more friendly and help it stand out from like 99% of the slush that they're probably getting in their inbox, where it's all writer focused and all like, oh, if I could hook up my train to this like celebrity, look what they could do for me, versus you come in and you're like, look, you're a person, you have problems, I could probably help you. You have a podcast. I'm a fantastic guest. How about we do an interview? That kind of approach works like so much better. So much better.
1000%. What came to my head as you were sharing that was just, do you have any tips around research? Because I think that's probably the understated part of this process, is actually the work you do before you send the email, right? So what works? What kind of suggestions you might have for listeners here?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely like your secret weapon. So I would say do it. Don't skip it. Like, first of all, just, it's kind of like eating your vegetables. Just do it. Find a good way to do it. For me, I like to roast my broccoli or pretend that I'm internet stalking my high school crush when I do research. Figure out what works for you, but just do it. So maybe that means like experimenting a little bit in the first couple times. Maybe that means setting like a timer for 5 minutes and what can I figure out in 5 minutes? But really what you're looking for in all your research is the answer to 2 different questions. Okay. The first question is, what connection do I have to this other person? Think of this as like cocktail small talk, right? Back in the days before COVID, when we all used to get together, what are those things that like someone's like, oh, I've got this type of dog. And you're like, oh, I have a golden retriever too. They're so fun. They're perfect with kids, blah, blah, blah. That's a point of connection. That's something that connects you and that other person. So what's your point of connection? It could be like you listen to a podcast interview that someone is on. You use someone's cold email in your Copy Hackers article, right? Like you reference them in a tweet. You gave them like a hat tip to like a trick or a book that you just found out about. I actually did this with Tim Stoddart. He's now the owner of Copy Blogger, I think. And I tweeted, like, he recommended this book by Austin. Oh, I'm going to butcher his name, but I think it's called Show Your Work.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the author of Steal Like an Artist. And Tim mentioned something in a newsletter, email that he put out this week. And so, of course, I like tip my hat to Tim in saying, thank you for recommending this book. And he replied back to my tweet. So that's a connection. So start looking for connections. That's the first thing that you want to do in your research. The second thing that you want to do is to figure out how you help them solve their problem. So it's kind of like a loaded question, but really you need to like work a little bit backwards, figure out what their problem is, and then figure out how you can help them solve that problem. And then tell them that in the email. Be clear, be super clear, which is a lot harder than it sounds. But just be clear, like, don't be afraid to like, just say it as it is. Like, I can help you get more website visitors because of this past client. Like, right. You could tie in a case study to help support your proof, give you some proof in that. If you have that, that would be a great spot to use like a little case study from a former client, that kind of thing. Just help them see how you can help them solve their problem.
All right. I'm going to jump in on the case study conversation.
Of course, I tried to tee you up.
I love it. You're amazing. Before we go there, I want to just quickly let everyone know that Laura's kindly shared 2 of her cold email templates that you can go away and look at, and some examples of cold emails that have been used before as well that have worked. Just head over to lauralopich.com/authentic influence. We'll link to that in the show notes, but certainly go and grab that because I know, like the learning and the lessons I hear, but until you see examples and you see templates, that's how I work. Like that's where I really can decode things. So check that out. Now let's talk about case studies, right? So when you're writing the cold pitch, okay, you've done your research, you've worked out, hey, like this is who this person is or this organization is, this is what they're, this is how I can help them, this is where we connect, or there's a connection here some way, and we're going to now we're sitting down, we've got our notepad, whatever it is that our writing tool is open, and so the first question I have is subject line, right? So and I get stuck there. I'm like, what do I put in the subject line? So what are your thoughts there? Do we get really clever with that and creative, or is it really straightforward?
You can do either. I've tried out either. A lot of times I like to go for kind of the compliments, but an ambiguous compliment. So like, so you could say something, for example, if you're cold emailing an expert to tell them that you featured them in an article, you can say featured you on Kissmetrics, right? So there's a compliment in there, but it's also like, wait, I'd like to know more. So it's ambiguous enough that they're like, okay, like how did you feature me? And tell me more details. So that's a really good goal for a subject line, because really the subject line has like one job only, which is to get your email opened. Because if your email doesn't get opened, your reader can't take action. So I like to go shorter rather than longer in subject lines, just because they tend to stand out more in the inbox. So I would say the best idea is to go into your inbox and just look at the length of the subject lines and start thinking about, if I emailed my friend, how could I get my email to stand out in this type of inbox? What would I put? Like I think I sent a pitch email that said, the subject line was like, holy French toast. And I was like, I think I have a good enough sense of like the reader's humor, and I think you would get it. But it's still like, it's always going to be a bit of a gamble. So definitely install tracking. I know in today's world, like privacy is big and a lot of people have that turned off on their phones, but still just installing some sort of tracking on your emails will help you see whether or not your email got opened, which will help you get better at writing better subject lines.
Yeah, I really like keeping it short. It also, now that most people are accessing through their, if it's their phone or iPads, you don't have a lot of space really for long email subjects. And I like, just that your point around curiosity. So get them curious enough to go, oh, okay, you've hooked me. Let me tell me more. And that kind of works with, like you say, with your friends, or you're sending them a text message or a WhatsApp message. It's really short and like, hey, cool movie, check this out. Like, you don't really say much. It's very you're selling the benefit in that subject line. Okay, now let's move to the body of the email and specifically how you would incorporate case studies, or where you've used case studies, particularly in the case where we're putting together a sales email pitch, right? Okay. So we're saying, okay, like I provide content services, and I like you do, and it's like, okay, I want to work with a certain type of client, so I'm sending them a pitch. Maybe they've seen my stuff before, maybe most likely they haven't. So where can case studies be utilized, and how would you use them in the story?
Yeah, so I would say definitely using them in a cold sales email is way more effective. I haven't tried them in the other types of cold emails, but I have tried them in cold sales emails, and they have done really well. I've used them with a couple of my private clients, and I think one of my clients, she saw, let me think, she saw like, she was seeing like a 30% open rate on her emails. That jumped to 50%. And then she was getting an amazing click-through rate. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was double digits, 10%, going from like 0.1% before, when we did a story-based cold email sequence. So it was kind of like a Netflix style sequence where it was like, stay tuned for the next, like, I amped up the pressure a little bit. Stay tuned for like tomorrow's email where you're going to see what I did next. And we used her founder story in there, but I've also used that same type of sequence in telling the customer story. So basically a case study, and that did really well for another private client. And they started booking sales calls off of that sequence. So I would say, think of what story is your reader going to relate with the most? And then how can you tell that story in a really engaging way? And it doesn't all have to fit like within one email. You can splice it out, and you can say, hey, like the first email's centered on the problem, and then the second email you agitate it, and then the third email, here's the solution, like they worked with me, right? Or whatever your solution is. That's a really cool way of using stories and that case study in different ways than you might have thought with just like kind of the standard like PDF case study.
Okay, I think I might be frozen. What's going? All right, let's keep going. Can you hear me, Laura?
Yeah, you're still good.
Yeah,
I think you're caught up now.
It's this Australia to US connection. It's a bit weird sometimes. So I love what you said there about just the structure. You're using the problem, agitate, solution framework, which is a copywriting framework that a lot of our listeners would know about. And then within that, you're saying, utilize a story of an example of you've talked about, okay, here's a problem to identify through my research. I see you might need some help here. Here's, an example of how I've been able to help another client do this. Now, what if you're starting out? Let's go back to when Laura didn't have all these clients and didn't start out, all right, and you didn't have the case studies yet. So how would you tweak that email, to make it compelling enough to get onto that, just even that discovery call?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So you need to figure out where you've previously done the same work that you're pitching, especially if you don't have any clients and you've never done, say, this particular project before. Where have you done work that feels similar, or maybe the process was similar to what you're pitching? So for example, in the beginning, I was pitching customer success stories, case studies, basically. I thought, I still think they're really fun and really cool. So what I pitched was customer success stories. I'd never done one, but I had written an interview-based blog post, which followed the same process. So I used that blog post as my example, as like you can check out, how did I word it? I said, you can check out, my other work, or a blog post that I did. I think I actually called it a case study. That's kind of ballsy thinking about it right now. But I think that email is in that Copy Hackers post too. But it's been a while since I sent one of those. I think I referenced it that way and said, like, hey, you can check out this, or you can check out the results that I got. Man, I wasn't expecting this question. It's something along those lines, but you basically figure out what you've done before that translates very closely to what you're pitching now. And say, like, I'm going to bring that up right now, and then there's like a little bit of like a word tweak where you can use it. And it's not like a huge word tweak, but it really is just like, I've kind of done this before, basically. Let me see. Oh yeah, here. I said, recently I helped a travel product company boost awareness and blow their funding goal out of the water with a case study. You can check it out here. So in this case, I did use the language like I did it as a case study, right? But
yeah.
I don't actually know how many people ever clicked through. It was more like a comfort blanket, to be honest with you, where people were like, oh, she's maybe done this before. She's including a link, right? Or they looked through to it and they were like, I like her style, so I'm going to reply yes. But yeah, really, you just want to reassure your cold email reader that, like, you're not some crazy person in the basement, right? Where you're going to take their money and never show up and do the work. You want to prove that you're legit. You want to prove that you're professional. So this is a good spot where once you start getting testimonials or like case studies, this is a good spot to start, like, just look quick little line, like, my last client saw this result, or here's what someone had to say about working with me. That can also do the same thing.
That's so cool. And thanks for sharing that example too, because I think we can relate to that. And this is the thing, like, we don't need to be perfect, right? Like, we're putting these things, we're testing, and you're always testing and you're seeing what works and what doesn't work. And you, after, a certain number of emails, you'll get data points and you'll say, okay, that worked really nicely. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm just pulled up one of the emails that someone cold pitched to me.
Cool.
And I'd like to get the expert's opinion on where they went wrong and what could be tweaked here to make it a lot better. Okay, so can you see this on the screen, Laura?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Yeah, so the subject was web mobile development and digital marketing. Okay. Do you like it? Would you change it a little bit?
It's like, wah, wah, wah. First of all, like, who other than sales emails, like, caps every word, right? It's like, nobody writes like that. So write like a human, first of all. Tell me maybe like a little bit about why I should care, first of all. And also this length looks like it would disappear in my inbox. So think about like what we talked about, like how can you be a little curiosity inducing? How can you stand out? Maybe that's using unusual punctuation. That's worked really well for me in the past, but how can you make it look different? How can you, this is the part where all of that programming from like through middle school through high school of don't be different, get into the crowd, you got to get the same shoes as everybody, you got to have the same hairstyle. This is the part where all that programming, you just have to be like, that's done. We're finished with you. I have to be different. This is the part where you have to embrace that.
Love it. Okay, now we're moving to the first sentence, the greeting. The greeting is interesting. It just literally says hello. There's no name, there's no nothing, it's just hello. Is that okay?
No. That looks like a copy paste job. Yeah.
Okay, so it helps to say, hey, Laura, or hey, Ann, right?
Yeah, or like, what's up? Or like at least make it sound like friendly.
And this is also the friendly part here, right? So the friendly part is, I hope you're doing great. Well, I think that's
as opposed to what? Like, I hope you're doing horrible? Like, seriously. Come on. Like, you could at least say, like, hope your 2022 is off to a great start. Like, at least have some relevance.
Fantastic. And I've deliberately pulled the person's name out here. I don't want to, do the thing. Then the next sentence was, hey, I'm A, that the name. So name is there, cool. Which, intro. Okay, here we go. Being a digital agency, we believe you get a lot of clients who come across a lot of technology needs, and it's important that you are able to cater each one of them. I'm feeling that's not very personalized. Like, it doesn't feel like they've done any research on what my challenges are. Like, that's kind of, yes, of course, every digital agent or digital agency has that kind of issue, or has that desire. But where would you say that could be done better, or how could it be done better?
I would say like, this is a good spot. This like beginning part of your email called the hook, because you're literally reaching out. It's like a fish hook. You're like reaching out and trying to hook your reader's attention and to keep them glued to the screen so they don't get distracted by the millions of notifications, right? So what can you say here that would hook them? 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a compliment. Just because compliments work so well, there's been research that's been done that shows your brain fires. Like when you receive a compliment, your brain fires in the same way it would if I gave you cash, like cold, hard money, cash. Your brain interprets like a compliment in that same fashion. So how can you give your reader some cash? How can you brag on them a little bit? As Brian Harris says, he's the founder of Video Fruit. And I love that phrase, like, how can you brag on them? Everybody doesn't want to brag about themselves, but they would love it if you bragged a little bit about them, to their face. So how could you do that? So that's the spot where you want to do it. Don't waste this space. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I'd go more than just saying, hey, I love your podcast or I love your blog. Like, I think that's so, like, everyone does that. I think if you can get very specific to, hey, I love this episode where you had Laura on, you talked about email marketing, that's very relevant to what we do. Maybe condense that into a sentence, but or like what you did with Noah, where, hey, I featured you in this article, take a look. Like, that's really, I think people like to see that you've taken an effort to do something, you've added value somewhere before you're sending this email to them.
Yeah, definitely. And on that point, if you have a takeaway or they change something in your life or your business because of their content, tell them, because a lot of times we just take in more information and more content and it makes a difference, but we never go back to the person who gave us that idea or gave us that aha moment to let them know, like, hey, what you did made a huge difference. And here's what I'm doing with that information. That's what they really want to hear. Not just that, hey, I'm a big fan of your podcast, but like what you guys talked about, like, really changed my approach to cold email marketing. And I'm going to be doing blah, blah, blah from now on. It's like, that is gold right there.
Yeah. Yeah. You've made an impact to me in some way. That's kind of what
Yeah.
you're communicating. Right. Let's move on. So we've got, however, now they're moving into a challenge. They've sort of introduced a challenge, and they've gone into a
Right.
deeper, expanded on the challenge. The bottleneck is technical limitation, which you may have in-house. However, you don't want to lose out, and that's where our company plays an important role. Now they're kind of moving into the benefit, which is we've got 150 plus skilled workers full time, etc., who have your back. What would you do differently here?
What's in it for me? Why should I care? Why do I need this? Do I need this? How do I tell if I need this? If I'm spending 60 plus hours working in my business a week and I'm not happy, does that make me need this? Or if I'm spending 20 hours a week working in my business, do I still need this? Why do I care? How can you answer that question for them? How can you help them see that what you are offering is the solution to their problem? Because as soon as you put that on the page for them, they're going to say, oh, Amph understands my problem. I really want to work with him because he put it on the page. Of course he understands. So of course he's going to be able to know how to solve the problem.
And I think that's where, if you have a case study, that could be very relevant. If you could share, this is what Darren had. This is the challenge he had before, we started working together.
Yeah.
He couldn't sleep at night because he's working 80 hours a week, and he just had a baby, and like you probably tell some of that story, right?
Yeah, exactly that. Tell a little story here, and you can even follow that same problem, agitation, solution, which dovetails really nicely into your call to action at the end, and say, would you like to get on a 15-minute call to discuss how we can make this work for you? It leads you so nicely into that.
100%. Okay, so now we get to the call to action. I think your call to action is great. What's wrong with your call to action?
There's no action. There's no call. He says, let's connect. Okay, cool. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? You just put this on me. Okay, I have enough work. I'm moving on. But if you ask a question, humans are naturally inclined to want to answer that question. We don't like to leave it unanswered, which is kind of why movie trailers work so well. Like, why is Tom Cruise hanging off the side of an airplane? What happened? How is the world going to end this time? I need these answers. So just use that. Put one question in your email, make it the call to action, put it at the end. I will say that A did a good job in breaking up the space on the page. I'm assuming that you copied and pasted kind of directly from their email.
Yeah.
So definitely keep that in mind, because as you mentioned earlier, people are reading emails on this like tiny little screen, right? That computer we carry around in our pockets. So keep in mind that that is probably the screen people are reading on, not like I'm looking at a monitor that's like 20 inches, right? Like it's big. My email is going to look a lot different on a big monitor versus that small screen. So use frequent paragraph breaks. And this person, A, did a good job of that.
Good job, A. So I don't know if A is ever going to watch this, but maybe I should send this video to them.
That would be interesting.
And then go sign up for Laura's course training, because I think there's a lot of work. All right, so look, Laura, I think that was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed that.
That was awesome.
A cold email. Let's stop the sharing. I'm going to remind everyone, if you want to go and grab two cold email templates, Laura shared that with us. Just go to Lopich.com. That's I should spell it out. It's Lopuch. So that's Lopich.com/authentic influence. Link will be in the show notes. So please do go and grab all those things and check out what she's working on. We're going to wrap up the interview. I mean, I have a ton of things I could ask you, and I might have to bring you back at another stage.
I'd love to come back. I love the email breakdown idea. That was awesome and brilliant.
I just thought, let's just show people where we can fix things with real story. So let's wrap up with a couple of questions I have, which is sort of common questions I get a lot. One is, if someone is wanting to become, they're looking to hire, okay, they're looking to hire a great content writer or someone who's great at email marketing or whatever it may be, what would you say, what are a couple of skills that or traits you feel great marketers have?
Wow. I would say that great marketers usually have an abiding curiosity, like it's insatiable. They're always wanting to like try and experiment, ask more questions, figure things out. And part of the asking questions is like not asking questions just of the work, but also of like who's using this and how are they using it and how can we help them use it better, or how can I tell them a story that would help them understand what we do in a better way, because it seems like they're confused. And the other thing is that I would say thinking with empathy is probably a big one. And that when you're thinking with empathy, you're thinking from the viewpoint of the other person, the person that you're really marketing to, that, or who you're writing for, if you're a content writer, and approaching what you're doing, your work, through that viewpoint, as opposed to your viewpoint of maybe knowing a little bit more or being further along the journey. But how can you step into their shoes, so to speak, and approach it that way?
And that's a common thread, I think. Definitely a key message that comes out from this conversation, and just the way you speak is, you're very empathetic as a human being. I would love at some another stage to dig into just where you've developed that. But let's make it practical for our listeners. So, can you recommend a resource, a book, a podcast, a documentary, whatever it may be, a course where people can really learn the skill of empathy and really understanding customers?
You know what? The person that jumps to mind is actually Brene Brown. And she talks a lot, if you guys aren't familiar, but she talks a lot about vulnerability and connecting and human relationship. So I would say one of her books, Daring Greatly, is a really good one to start with. It touched a lot of themes, especially as an entrepreneur. I would say start there and see what kinds of things pop up for you, because she does talk a lot about empathy and how to relate, that kind of thing.
Great resource. I'd also, related to Brene, she's got a documentary on Netflix. So if you haven't seen that, yeah, she does it like I think it's like a 90-minute or a 60-minute talk, and it's fantastic.
Oh, that's cool.
Like like she shares some really, and this is the thing about her, she's very vulnerable. So she talks about some of the, she shares a story of how her and her husband went swimming at a camp on a lake or something, and in that moment there was something that came up that really challenged her understanding of leadership, which is really cool. Anyway, Daring Greatly, and check out the Netflix documentary. Okay, so final question for you, Laura, and I appreciate we've gone a bit over time, but we had a bit of fun with the breakdown and everything, so that's cool. What's one or two things that you do for your own mental well-being and health?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. I've been thinking a lot about this topic. I mean, this, by the way, it could be like, if anybody's listening, I would love to talk like for days about this topic. Partially, so really the two things that I try to do every day is to go for a walk and get outside and like just move. Something about movement just really, first of all, it unlocks all those that dam of thoughts that you kind of carry around in your head all day. And you're like, oh, I got to do this. Oh, I got to do that. Oh, I got to do this. And sometimes you get lost in like the to-do list. But once you take a walk, everything kind of sorts itself out. And especially if I'm having trouble in figuring out how I want to talk about something, maybe I'm like struggling with an email, or like, especially with pitches, like, how do I want to approach this person? What's my thread of connection? How do I want to like brag on them? How do I want to give them a compliment? I go for a walk, and by the end of it, I'm like, the email is like written. It's unbelievable how your mind can work when you just get outside and let it do its thing. The other thing that I really like to do, and that has helped me a lot, is some sort of meditation. I use Headspace. Been using it for a couple of years now. And I've also started using breath work, which is also really cool. My business coach, Kathleen O, I think her website is coachkathleeno.com. She has like a free breath work session on there. And breath work, just if you're not familiar with it, it like unlocks all those emotions that you kind of like bury inside yourself to get through your day, or maybe your week, or maybe your year, whatever it might be. But breath work really helped me navigate both like COVID, lockdown, new baby, and business kind of all in the course of like 1 month, basically. I basically had a new baby, then lockdown happened, and I'm still like running a business. And it's like, how do I deal with all of that? Breath work really helped a lot in moving those emotions out.
That's so powerful, and congratulations on the newborn. Like I think you made a really good point there about just giving yourself space to allow things to fester and really like I wouldn't say analyze, but definitely feel into what's going on when you are. Perhaps you're juggling multiple identities, like you say, I'm the mother, and then I'm the entrepreneur or the business owner, and I'm the wife or the husband or whatever these things are. And how often do we give ourselves space and time just to sit with? I read a really great. I'm following this person on IG, and I'm not sure if you are, but her name's well, not her name, but the profile is holistic. Let me just bring it up because I think this is like my favorite IG account right now.
Yes, please share.
It's the holistic psychologist. That's the username.
Okay.
And her name's Dr. Nicole LePera. And she shared I'll link this to the show notes too. She shared a post yesterday, which is the title of the post. She does a lot of these carousel things, and it's titled "Let's Talk About Friendship Breakups." And it's all about, like, she brings to light, and this is what I like about her feed, is she brings up to light. We talk a lot about romantic relationships, we talk about marriages, we talk about parenting, but how often do we actually talk about how natural it is for friendships to break up?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
All right, and that, when you're being ghosted, by a friend perhaps that you've known for years, or maybe you've done that to them unconsciously, and you're not deliberately saying, "Hey, I'm going to avoid someone." It's maybe because you've just evolved, or they've evolved, and other things have popped into their life, like things get come in the way or develop. Like I got married, both myself and my wife didn't spend nearly as much time as we did with our single friends that we did before we got married. These sort of things, and it's still, hey, we still love you, but at the same time, we've got someone really important here in the world. Like, I'm sure, Laura, you with your child, like that's number one. Like that's the focus right now. And we don't always have the conversations or the grieving around losing friendships. We don't sit there and say, hey, like that was a really important person in my life for 5 years or 10 years through high school, and we don't connect anymore, and that's okay. I still care for them. And it doesn't, we tend to think, like, there's me ranting about friendships here, but I think it's related to just what you were saying about doing breath work, and that's allowing you to access different emotions and thoughts and processes that you're going through, and bring you back to something that meditation I do is just to hand on. I learned this from Tony Robbins, hand on the heart, and you just really give gratitude to being alive and the fact that your heart is beating, because that in itself is a miracle. Because in order for you to be here listening to this episode, this us talking here, a lot of different things had to go right for you to be here today, right? Like, and continue to go right, because I had a family member who was less than 15 years old pass away, and they had a situation that was kind of like, oh my gosh, you're too young. The thing is, you're too young to die. Anyway, thank you so much for sharing just some of these things. I definitely feel that could be a completely different episode.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like definitely.
Yeah.
Great question.
All right, so we will wrap it up here. We've gone just on the hour. Again, 2 cold email templates that Laura's sharing with us. Laura, lopich.com/authentic influence. check out her website as well. Are you on? Well, definitely on Twitter. What's your handle on Twitter again?
It's waiting to be read. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a story there somewhere. And are you on any of the other socials?
I'm on Instagram. I'm quite honestly not very active on any of them. The easiest way to get in touch with me is really to sign up for my email list, and then hit reply to an email. That's generally where my focus goes, to be honest with you. But I am on Instagram. It's Laura Lopich, and I'm on Twitter. I might not see your message for a couple weeks, but you are guaranteed to see. I will definitely see your email if you sign up for my list and hit reply, because that's where I am.
Amazing. And just for those who are curious about, okay, if I'm wanting to learn more about this email marketing, and you have is it a program? What is it that you kind of the core thing that you help, the way you help your clients?
Yeah. So I do have a program. It's called Zero Opens to Full Pipeline. And if you do get those templates, you will be added to my list. You will know about when the program opens. But really, if you want to get started like now, kind of quick and dirty with cold sales emails, I would highly recommend my cold email toolkit. And you can, yep, exactly. You've got it all lined up. Thank you very much. It's just lauralopich.com/cold email toolkit. And in there, you can get templates for sending a cold email, the cold sales email. So you can get like a one-to-one client really quickly. You can really go from like blank page, well, not blank page, because I'm giving you a template, but to finish cold email in as little as 2 hours with this toolkit. So you can get up and running and get started with cold emails if that sounds interesting to you, if that's your jam.
That's awesome. We'll definitely link to that, and I would recommend you do that, because as someone who's written emails from scratch, and then sometimes they take a lot longer than 2 hours.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
When you have a framework to follow, it just makes life a lot more simpler, and it's
so
a proven
easier.
Framework.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So thank you so much, Laura, for joining us today. For all of you who are listening, if you have any tweetables or whatever you got some insight from this, please share with us and tag myself, tag Laura. We always love to hear from you, and if you want to leave a review or whatever it may be, I welcome those too. Thanks so much, Laura, for joining us, and we're gonna have to have you back because there's a lot more we can jam on.
I'd love it.
Much for your time, and we'll talk to you all real soon.
Thank you.